all of a sudden, you're the good guy, right? You go through all this, you risk your life, you're pushing past your own personal boundaries of fear or everything else,
Right.
and you're seeing mountains of cash
Right.
from criminals in front of you.
Right. Right. And we call them criminals because they were breaking the law. But to be honest with you, and I mentioned it to you briefly, I didn't really, at some point, they didn't look like criminals to me anymore. I knew they were bad because they were doing bad things. But the reality was that's just how they lived. Like, I don't, and I'm not justifying their actions because what they did was wrong, you know, but I began to, so there comes a point where when you're surrounded by so much of this activity, but that you actually you can almost justify in their behalf why they're involved in this business because there's really no employment for them. Now, to say the word no, someone's going to say there's always a naysayer. Oh, they could have went to Burger King. They could have went McDonald's. You know, there's all those the entry level jobs, which we understand. But at that point, it was like $4 an hour or $3 an hour. They're not going to be able to help pay their mother's rent or more. It's not going to work. They food, they need shoes. $200 for to Air Jordans with $200 back then. All right, so I mean, so my point is that you're not dealing with what people would think is there's nothing normal around you. The only thing normal is that when you leave there, you go home to what is deemed to be normal. All right. The problem is between your house and getting home, you see nothing normal. So that begins to take an effect on you. In my case, I was going home with $6 in my pocket, and I had to, I'm not going to say I had to feed my family with that $6. At the time, I was living in my parents' house, because I couldn't afford a place yet. So then there becomes a point where we started to get a little bit of raises. I got a good deal on a house. I put a tenant upstairs to pay my rent because I couldn't afford it. And then you know, I'm working hand to mouth, trying to survive. And then what came along was a young Puerto Rican kid from Puerto Rico, had no ID, but he had a good Corvette and a stack of money in his pocket. And it you got to realize that I'm doing my job and I'm just not getting ahead. So whatever. And so at some point here, I decide I mean, here's a kid who barely speaks English. He just came to America from Puerto Rico. He doesn't even have a license. He has no registration, no insurance, but he has the title. So I go, okay, the kid's got the title. It's signed into his name. I don't want to hurt this kid. He's not doing anything illegal right now, but he got a knot of hundreds like this in his fanny pack. You know what? 102 wouldn't hurt him, and we can let this whole thing go away, and I can come up. And that's really what happened at that moment. That's exactly what happened at that moment. And then, of course, when I left that scene, I was a little scared for a while, thinking, "Oh my God, what did I just do?" And but like anything else, you take a piece of candy, and then the next time you go back, you take a bag of candy, and the next time you go back, then you take a box of candy. So that was the beginning. I crossed the temptation line there, and then things began to get easier for me. So yeah, that's where I was at that very time of my career that I focused a point. I mean, I had seen things earlier and had been maybe let's say lapsing or lacking, but not involved. Like I looked at something, I said, I don't care. What's it my business? That was in Queens, and then a couple of things. One of the things that really disturbed me in Brooklyn that sort of set me off. Not very, and I don't really talk about this often you'd have to actually listen to everything I've ever said. Was I pulled a car over on on Jamaica Avenue, right near Highland Park, and right in front of the Showboat. Back then it was called the Showboat. It was a catering hall in East New York, Brooklyn, right on the border of Queens. I think it's on 75th Street. Go figure, right on the corner of 75th and the last street in Brooklyn, which I think it was I could say I don't want to say wrong. I can't remember. It might have been Eldridge. Anyway, so I pull a car over for blowing a stop sign right in front of me. Pull him over, license registration. And behind me pulls up a 7.5 squad car. Huh. Oh, wow. They're checking me. They're backing me up. No, they pulled their guns on us. I'm in a patrol car in a blue and white in uniform, working for the 75th precinct, New York City. and I got one cop on one side, one cop on the other, saying, "What are you guys doing?" With their guns drawn, not pointed at us, but out of their holster.